Hi everyone, Vincent here, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. 2 years ago, I spoke to someone which we called Ben. It wasn't his real name. He's very happy now for us to call him his real name, which is David. And I spoke with David, Ben, back then about a very difficult situation he was going through regarding a breakup. But now we're 2 years later from when I spoke with David, and I'm delighted to have him here today to talk to us about what happened 2 years after the breakup situation he found himself in. So thank you so much for joining us, David, and please tell us your story in the 2 years which have happened since we last spoke.
So basically at the time we last spoke, the relationship situation was that I'd just been broken up with by obviously an ex, with the news that she was terminally ill with cancer, which was obviously pretty devastating and hit me pretty hard. And went with all the feelings of like worrying about her and all this sort of stuff, among being confused and everything about the breakup. But basically where things are now are very different for a couple of reasons. Really what I've done is in the last especially the last year, I've actually got some counselling, and the counselling wasn't related to the relationship. It was sort of a bit deeper than that. In a nutshell, I went through about 16 years of anxiety, really bad anxiety, due to a workplace bullying situation many years ago. Obviously, prior to 16 years ago. So that was kind of like a thing that was really impacting my life. And I think in the process of doing that, it helped me with a lot of things, including sort of my, I'll probably say my self-image to a large degree, and also dealing with like tough situations and things like that I might not have really had the same coping skills that I do now back then. So in a nutshell, kind of that's where it's at now.
You know, a lot of people listening will completely understand almost what you're saying here, that there is generally more than one thing going on, especially when we look deep inside. You know, you went through a breakup, but then you no doubt acknowledged that there were other things which were troubling you. You know, like you said, you know, your workplace bullying was having a big impact on you as a person. So it's great to hear that you had some support regarding that. I think one of the questions I wanted to ask, and for those of you who have not listened, you know, I've put a link to the original interview so you can listen back. But as David was saying, when the breakup took place, not only was he dumped, but he was told by his now ex that she was terminally ill. Now, that is obviously horrific. It's obviously terrible and frightening. But when I last spoke with David during that interview, if I remember correctly, there was actually a little bit of debate about whether this was even real. Now, that might sound shocking. And I legitimately, you know, for anybody listening, I legitimately do not know whether it was real or not. And I do not know what happened. So I'm going to ask this tentatively. What happened with your ex?
Vincent, I basically had to come to my own conclusion in a way, because I was told by her sister at the time, as you may recall, when I reached out to her family out of concern for her because she kind of shut me out. I was told by the sister within days of the breakup that basically it wasn't true. I think it was like 3 days to a week, somewhere in that vicinity. So her sister's telling me it's not true, and apologising to me profusely for her sister putting me through this and all that sort of stuff. So I had to come to my own conclusion because I never got a definitive answer other than what her sister had said. I think when the family is telling you that, you've kind of got to conclude that that's probably the truth. Or I did anyway. I still had some doubts because my ex basically tried to tell me that she hadn't told her family about being sick. And I met up with her a month after the breakup, which I don't know if we covered in the previous conversation, but all the same, when I spoke to her about that, she said to me basically that she hadn't told her family because she didn't want to worry them and so forth. And then when I met up with her after I left that meeting a month down the track, I actually did contact her sister and I said, look, I've just met up with her and everything's good kind of thing. And it wasn't to pry or anything. It was just to sort of reassure the sister that, everything was good and that we had a good conversation, etc. And the sister was still warning me, just be careful. So I kind of have to conclude that it was not true. And also too, it's been 2 years and she seems to be in, pretty good health. So not to say that's that's proving that it wasn't true, but that'd probably be perhaps an indication that it wasn't as dire as I was told. So yeah.
Horrific stuff, from all angles and perspectives. And, to be dumped and to also be told that the person who was ending the relationship is in essence going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really get much worse than that until you then find out, but it's actually a lie, in which it then almost somehow feels worse. I would suggest. I mean, I'm not the one who's
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Terrible stuff. So, how did you pick yourself up from that point? I mean, like I said at the beginning, we spoke 2 years ago, slightly over 2 years ago. I believe it was in September. So,
yes.
How did your life play out from that very low point that you were at?
Okay, so the last time we spoke, she had I think I'd updated you that she just emailed me and told me that, I'd reached out to her via email, I think at that point, or responded to one of her, more recent emails at that time, and basically, because she was breadcrumbing me for a good couple of years as well, keep that in mind. So I'd replied to one of her emails, and then basically she had come back to that on the 27th of September, so I've got a pretty good memory for dates, but that's around the time we spoke. But I think I updated you. So she emailed me and said, this is not something I want to pursue. And basically, it was a bit of a slap in the face because here I was being breadcrumbed for 2 years and she was kind of leading me on, making out like she wanted to resolve things. And it was like I was, in hindsight, being kept there as like an option in case anything else that she looked for didn't work out. That's how I felt after the fact. So to pick myself up from that, I think once that happened, it was kind of like that was don't want to be morbid here, given the context, but that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for the whole thing for me because, I got a slap in the face and told that, basically she didn't want to pursue this, and I was kind of like, all right, well, I'm kind of done with this whole situation, although it's not as simple as turning it off at the flick of a switch. But what I did do was that allowed me to then actually free myself up to go, dating basically and start looking for someone new and not be restricted by the fact that I felt, what would you say, loyalty to her, for lack of a better term, because I'm really loyal, so I sort of still felt some loyalty to her at that point, but then I had to kind of distance myself from that and disengage from that and go, you know what, like I'm going to give myself the opportunity to go out and date. And in December of that same year, so trying to think of it, it was only like 12th of December, I met a new girl.
Okay.
And that went quite well. So, yeah.
So you went through an experience, but a lot of people do, where they almost feel guilty about dating new people despite being dumped. So many dumpees tell me, I feel like I'm being disloyal. I feel like I'm cheating on my ex, even though they've been dumped, even though, the dumpee is single and can live the life they want to. They feel that guilt. And it sounds like you struggled with that a bit yourself, but then you managed to get back out dating and you met someone, I think you've said in December, and it seemed to go quite well. So how did that develop, that new connection?
It was obviously different person, totally different dynamic, and I think it was someone, I think I realised, not to backtrack too much, but I think part of that picture was that I realised that this new person was more suited to me. My ex at the time, I kind of have realised since that breakup and since that point in sort of, the later part of 2023, I kind of started to realise how incompatible we were in a lot of regards, like how would you put it, our values, our political views, different things like that. Our values are really the big one because all that ties in, but I really started to realise how much we were different, and difference is good, but in hindsight I took her off the pedestal to make it really simple. I just sort of started to see things that I was just like, I'm not on board with her on that kind of thing. And it started to sort of mount up, and I went, you know what, like, I'm actually glad that she ended it at the end of the day, because I would have stayed, you know what I mean? But yeah, moving on to the new girl. So basically that went really well for a while. That did become complicated, and basically I ended that one. That's a whole different story, but I think I had the confidence to end that because there were some labels being thrown around that I now understand why, but they weren't deserved, and they were to do with her ex-partner and abuse and different things. So yeah, I sort of don't want to get down that rabbit hole too much right now on you, but I think at that point I just basically saw that there was opportunity kind of thing to meet someone new, and that progressed quite nicely initially, at least for like the first 3 to 6 months. So yeah.
Okay, so you got into this new relationship. It sounds like you actually decided to end it this time around. When did that relationship end?
So that ended in what was it? I know the dates actually. The 13th of September last year. So her and I are kind of still talking. We've been not on and off, but talking and then not talking. So that's been a whole experience. We're currently kind of talking, but I ended that one to answer your question. But I think the reason being is because I had the confidence to it wasn't lack of care, quite the contrary, but it was like my confidence to say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate having labels put on me that are not fair and that are not deserved, especially very early on in the relationship. So that kind of started 3 months in and progressed through to about the 6 month mark. And after 2 or 3 different incidents where it was like, just having labels thrown at me and, unfair comments and things and accusations and stuff, I'm just like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to accept that kind of treatment kind of thing. So I ended that.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like you were together maybe around 9 months or so. And
that is correct. Yeah.
Do you remember during that time whether you were still thinking of we'll call her your original ex? Do you remember during that relationship still thinking about her and things?
I will be honest, at the very start of that relationship, yes, but for probably like the first month or so. And I think the reason for that, without getting too far off track on you, I think the reason for that was because, like, you don't just switch those feelings off, as great as a new person might be. And there was probably a lot of unresolved questions as well. So, yeah, to be honest with you, for maybe about the first month of that relationship, to be fair, I did. But I was, like, as always, totally loyal to the new girl. And also, too, I wasn't in contact with the ex at all. So, just to make that very clear.
No, but that's brilliant to hear. I'm curious to know about how you know that your original ex is healthy. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead. Maybe this is connected to something you're going to say later down the line. I don't know. But you said at the beginning of today's podcast interview, whatnot, you said that you know, like right now, she's okay, she's healthy. So is that because you have some level of connection still, or is this connected to something you're going to tell us later on down the line? Or?
I'll tell you now. So, like, as much as people say, like, don't check their social media and stuff, like, I didn't go out of my way to do that. But what happened was, initially when I got into, when I sort of got into that new relationship in 2023, I kind of was a little bit still checking and stuff, because I hadn't quite totally disengaged from that situation. But I realized very quickly, like, I wouldn't be unfair to, my new potential partner or new partner, or however you want to put it, in giving them a chance, because I just honestly believed for a long, long time that every relationship has to be a clean slate. I've always believed that. But basically, what happened was I can give you a name if you like, or I can give you her name. I mean, no one's going to know who she is anyway, so it doesn't matter. But just to simplify it, if you like.
Sure.
Okay, so Angela, the original ex that we spoke about, basically the reason I know is because she was stalking my social media for on and off over the whole 2-year period, to the point where even very recently, like only in the last couple of weeks, she's been looking at my LinkedIn, and she was, before that, not long before that, she was looking at my TikTok on a regular basis, or fairly regular basis. I ended up putting my TikTok on private because I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not even interested. I blocked her on LinkedIn about a week or so ago, because I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I really just don't have any attachment there, and I don't want to know what she's up to. I don't really care too much. But yeah, that's what was happening. So she was monitoring my social media, and that would sort of provoke me to kind of have a squeeze. And at that point, by that, we're talking like earlier this year and stuff. Like, I just didn't care anymore for a long time. So just like, if she sees it, I looked at it because she looked at mine. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's immaterial. So yeah, so that's how I knew, and that's how I know that she's in good health. So yeah,
it's interesting as well for those people listening and thinking, oh, my ex will never ever check on me, and I'm not even I'm not talking from the dumpee's perspective. I'm talking from the dumper, because what we have here is a classic example of you walked away, you moved forward with your life. And guess what? The person who ended your relationship is starting to wonder about you. They're starting to arguably miss you. And they keep checking your socials. So, that is a classic example. If anybody's listening and thinking, well, my ex-dumper will never care to look for me again. Most of them do. And, what's happening with David here is, even now, more than 2 years on, his ex is still checking him out. So that's just something for those of you listening on that. But going back to your story, David, and what happened with your, you got into that new relationship. It lasted around 9 months. You decided to end it. So what did you do then? What did you do moving into the end of 2024?
So I've pretty much been doing my own thing. I haven't dated or anything like that. I still would like to work things out with my last ex, but I've not been chasing. Like, I've very much made a point of not chasing in that situation. It was a bit different because I ended it, so I kind of felt like I needed to make some effort to try and, communicate with her a little bit to try and see if we could work something out with that. I think it's different when you end it, and I've only done that twice in my life, to be clear. So that's kind of almost new territory for me. The reason I ended that situation, and I've got a really good, I suppose you say quote, but basically a really good way of describing it. So I ended that situation, or that relationship more to the point, because the dynamic at the time wasn't working. So it was simply that I wanted that dynamic to change, and I needed her, in my view, to stop applying labels to me. Like, to give you an example, one of them was narcissist, which anyone that knows me will tell you I'm like the complete opposite of that. But yeah, it's things like that, just labels and stuff that I didn't deserve, and I just needed her to kind of realize, like, I'm not going to be the, you know, if you want to say the punching bag, that's how I felt about it. Like, I wasn't going to be the punching bag in the situation. I've done that enough in my life. And even though I did care about her a lot, I just had the, how would I put it, the confidence to kind of say, like, no, I'm not, putting up with that. So yeah, that's why I ended that.
So are you, as of right now, in November 2025, are you technically single?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. So during this interim period from September 2024 to November 2025, how did that play out for you?
It's been, to be honest, it has been tough. I've only really come to, and obviously I'm the one that ended it, so it's weird. I feel weird saying this, but it took me quite a while to come to terms with the possibility that relationship may not, be repaired. I wasn't like cruel or anything about the way I ended it. I was pretty direct and pretty kind, considerate in the way that I put it across. There was no, nastiness or arguments or vindictiveness or anything like that. That's just not me anyway. So yeah, it's been tough, and I've only just probably in the last 3 months kind of got to the point where I'm like, you know what, like, as much as I would like to work that out, I can't, sort of depend on that working itself out. I mean, I can talk to her when she talks to me, and we can communicate like we have been in the last couple of days, for example. But I'm not going to. I was apologising for a long time, and then I realised, like, I don't necessarily have too much to apologise for. The only thing I ever really apologised for was ending it as soon as I did, because I sort of, in hindsight, think I maybe could have given it a bit longer to let those things iron themselves out to a degree, because she's dealt with domestic violence and stuff like that. So, there's reasons for her triggers and so forth, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough to answer your question, and I've only just started to sort of mentally get past that. I wouldn't call it despair like the last relationship, but that sadness or the fact that potentially could have been something really good.
If you were to consider your journey and her journey, as best as you know it, because she might not have told you everything, but in the last year and a bit where you've been split up, you as Badumper, her as Dumpee, have either of you dated any new people, or what? I mean, what?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, I have a thing, it might be unusual for, I've said I want to generalize here, but, some people would say this is unusual for males, maybe. But I just have like a real thing about, I don't really want to move forward with a new relationship or any kind of new intimacy or anything like that with someone new until I know that last situation is over, because to me, like, I just can't go back once that's happened. It's just something to do with, I've always been like that. I just, when someone's been intimate with someone else, or whether it's me or whether it's her, and I pretty much, to be honest, did tell her this, where I'm like, there's a line that I'm not crossing yet, and once one of us does, I just don't go back after that. And that was not recently, that was a few months ago I told her that, but that's just me. I just have that thing about me where I just won't move into something new until I know it's well and truly done and dusted. Hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, and how did she take the breakup when you ended it, and how did she live her life over the last year?
So it was interesting, because she was like, we met up about a month after, roughly 3 weeks or so after the actual breakup, and I'm not proud of saying this, but I did do it via message. It's not. I mean, I've only broken up with two people in my life, and so like it wasn't sort of trying to get out of it or anything, but it ended up being the way that I did do it. And so to answer your question, the way things have gone with her, she was pretty upset from what I can tell about the whole thing, and basically when I broke it off, I said to her, please don't come to my house to try and resolve things, because I just felt that I thought that was a bit intrusive. She didn't try to or anything, but she had done once before about something else, and I don't know, it's a bit of as weird as it sounds, it's a bit of a line. Unless you tell me you're coming to my house or you're invited, I kind of just feel it's a bit intrusive to just rock up. But basically, she took it pretty hard from what I know. And then when we met up about 3 weeks later, we went out for coffee and stuff. And I don't want to use profanity on the recording, but basically she said, "Oh, you've effed that," kind of thing about the relationship. And yeah, she was pretty cut up about it. But then she kind of, I think she may be dismissive avoidant, and she I think she went through like a deactivation. Now, I'm not trying to diagnose, but I think that's what's happened, because she went quite, almost like she didn't really care for quite a while there. But we were still meeting up, like from, trying to think, just November, December last year. I would have said December-ish last year. We were meeting up. October, November. We were still meeting up for like 6 months on a fairly regular basis, at least like once a fortnight, once a fortnight to once a week kind of deal, and going for coffee and stuff like that. So I thought things were progressing back to very quiet. I had a few good conversations, but it was very one-sided with the conversations about the whole situation. And then basically earlier this year in like April, she's been dealing with a lot. I don't want to get into the ins and outs of it, but basically she's been dealing with a really horrific neighbour that's giving her a hard time. She's also become unemployed 2-3 months ago as well. And she also has a son that has basically autism and ADHD, or one or the other. So she's going through a lot at the moment. So I've sort of backed off and left it alone and waited for her to reach out. But yeah, that's how it sort of travelled.
I mean, how long after you ended the relationship did you almost change your mind? Or was it more so that you never really wanted to end it, but unless she changed A, B, and C, you couldn't be with her? I mean, because it sounds like you were meeting up very soon after the breakup. So, at what point were you open to reconnecting?
So it was the latter of the two that you just described. It was basically, I didn't want to end things full stop, but I just felt like, because there were things like, and I'll keep this really short and sweet, but the first example was I was sitting on the lounge at her house, and her son and her were there in the kitchen right near the lounge room. It's sort of, that's how houses are now. And I was on my phone, and she said, "Oh, you're taking photos of me and my son, right?" And I was like taken back, and and I'll keep this really short, but basically I was like, what the hell? I didn't say it, but I was thinking like, what the hell? And as a male, as you can probably appreciate, when someone starts saying stuff like that, you start thinking, hang on a sec, you're going to start getting accused of doing untoward things, put it that way. That's how I view it. That was the first example. The second was her son had a bit of a meltdown one night, and we were about to go to bed and everything, and long story short, she threw a garbage bag down the hallway and stuff, split it open and stuff, and kind of had a bit of a meltdown herself in that. And the next morning, because we were kept up so late, I woke up the next morning and I had my phone there, and she was still sleeping, so I didn't want to flash her in the eye. So I'm just like looking at my phone because I was overtired. Is probably the way I can describe it. And she woke up and she's like, because I turned the phone light away from her to, not to kind of cop her in the eyes. She said, "Oh, are you talking to your ex?" Which was not true. And I was like, straight up, like, that was sort of situation number 2. And the third one was we went out for a date night to the cinemas, and basically we had about 45 minutes before the movie started, and she said, "Oh, you want to go get a bite?" So we went to the restaurant just down the way, and basically I said to her when we walked in, we sat down, we ordered, and I'm a very punctual person, and that was one of the things with her, was that ever since our first date, she was always generally about half an hour late for everything. So I was sort of, that particular day, I'd sort of had enough, because I was sitting at my house for about an hour ready to go and waiting for her. And it came to a head on her side where we sat down and I said, "Oh, do you think they'll have our meals ready on time?" And she sort of snapped at me and said, "Oh, not everything needs to be perfect, David." And then she goes, "Oh, no wonder all your exes left you," and then calls me a narcissist, right?
Oh.
And I was like, so I copped all that in one hit, right? So it's like, anyway, I want to make this succinct for you, but they're the kind of things that were leading up to the breakup. So to answer your question, like, I never wanted to end it. I really do like her. I think she's a really great girl and everything. I just needed her to acknowledge her, I'm going to say behavior for a lack of a better term, but I needed her to acknowledge that stuff. And even though I kind of felt like it was due to triggers, I needed her to kind of go, "You know what, like, I'm going to do something about this, or, try and get some help with this or something like that, to try and resolve whatever traumas there were."
It sounds like you both really like each other, but there's just these things that need to be ironed out. And I'm really hoping that can happen. Obviously, you're in communication now, and you have been for a lot of the time since. How would you describe your mindset now? I mean, where are you at right now, David, in how you feel and your journey? And what message as well would you give to Dumpees who are going through the grind? I mean, reflecting back on 2 years of the original heartbreak and the difficulties you're going through now, like, how are you feeling, and what is your message to people?
I'm glad you asked. A lot more positive than I was, obviously, a couple of years ago when I spoke to you, for starters. I've learnt a lot. I've learnt a lot about, not only myself, but basically also I would say, life. Like, I've realised a few things. I've learnt a lot about, and I won't get into this too much right now, of course, but I've learnt a lot about attachment theory. And I think that's really helped me massively, because it's helped me identify behavioural patterns that I was sort of seeing, that, I'm not blaming myself anymore for stuff as much, whereas, 2 years ago I was a lot more, I would always blame myself for everything, and even up until, let's say 6 months ago, I would have blamed myself for a lot of stuff, whereas now I'm like, I'm not like I don't take accountability, but I definitely separate my actions from other people's actions and go, you know what, like, this is what I'm responsible for, that's what they're responsible for. But basically what I would say is that I realised that, like, things get better. That's probably the main thing. As much as things can get dark and, you feel like it's the end of the world when you have a breakup, and we all do, I know we all do, and I've definitely been there plenty of times, but I've kind of realised, like, it's not. Like, I can still care about that person and everything, but, at the end of the day, what they decide to do is their choice. And if they decide, for example, to end it, then that's their choice. I can't take that on board as being, always purely my fault. So things do get better. And I've also learned, this is probably the last thing and to me the most important part, I've learned to let go. Like, that's probably the biggest one. I've learned to let go of situations. I've learned to let go of people, and it's not because I want to or I want to be cruel, but it's just because I've got to kind of look after myself first and foremost. Otherwise, I can't be the best for anyone that I'm with.
It's amazing to hear you, release all of these thoughts and emotion, because so many people are struggling and they want to hear it, from the horse's mouth, as it goes, as the saying goes. And you have been through it, and you're still going through different things, but you're much happier, it sounds like. You've come out of the other side. You're now in a different situation. And as I always say, we never know when the story ends. We never know, when chapters are going to, characters from our chapters going to come back into our story, etc., etc. You're in a situation now where you ended a relationship a year ago, and yet you might get back together from a different perspective this time. I mean, for those people listening who are feeling really lost, I mean, what would you say to them? What do you have any advice or suggestions or anything that you feel you could kind of give back to people who are really struggling?
I do. I think as much as people say it, I think definitely try to get some help if you need to, therapy-wise. Like, as in, I actually spoke to a psychologist for over 12 months, like over a 12-month period. So I'd have at least monthly appointments with them. And the reason I say that is because it might not just be the relationship issues. I know we touched on this before, but I think for me, what it did was it resolved some of the relationship issues and relationship guilt and so forth that I had. But it also helped with the underlying stuff that sort of built up to that. So not to get into it right now, but I had a quite difficult childhood. I won't go into that, but I had quite a difficult childhood and quite a manipulative stepfather. So there was kind of that base to everything that I think was there, and then everything that happened sort of in my life beyond that was kind of compounded by that, if that makes sense. So I think by talking to the psychologist, it helped me resolve a lot of stuff mentally that I'd never spoken about. And then because I was able to do that, it then alleviated the pressure of everything else that was sort of piling up on top of that. So I definitely would recommend that. I don't want to be cliche, but try to be positive, because you can't control, it's probably one of my key things, you can't control other people's actions. And I think the best way to do things is remember that. Because if you're like, if someone's viewing it as, if I had done this differently, and it's not about not taking accountability, because that's a different thing. But if people are looking at it like I used to, where it's like, everything's my fault, I'm always at fault, I'm always in the wrong, and therefore that person left me because of me and because of the way I am and because I'm effectively faulty, then that didn't help me. You know what I'm saying?
It's great advice. We can only control the controllables. We can't control the things that we have no control over. It might sound obvious to say, but when you're in it, you often get lost and think that, we can only control the controllables. We can't control other people's actions. We can only focus on ourselves. And speaking to people, I'm obviously a big believer in talk therapy, with my audio coaching service. I mean, me and you obviously spoke as well. Talking is so important, releasing that emotion, trying to find a path forward which works for you. It's absolutely huge. And it's great as well to speak with you, David, again, and just to see you come out the other side, to see you come out the other side of this dark, bleak tunnel that you were in. And I know technically right now you're still in a bit of a situation, but you're in a different place now. You're looking at things from the other side. And I think that you're going to make sure that you only enter a relationship again if it works for you. And if this doesn't, I mean, my advice to you right now would be, don't let this drag on too much into 2026. We're in November 2025 now. You've been kind of on and off for a year. If I was you, I would be trying to focus on trying to find exactly, because this can't continue in this way. So I would try and just definitively find which way it's going to go.
And that's really, and to sort of wrap things up for you from, my side of things, so to speak, that's one thing that I've very much, not only realized, because I've, wasted a lot of time in my past with people that weren't good for me. So I've been there, done that. And I'm talking prior to these last two relationships, but I agree with you. Like I have set a deadline for the start of the coming year, basically Christmas. Once December's over, I'm just like, that's a wrap. I have, because if you think about it, the relationship before that was 2 years, total of 4 years, but then 2 years of basically being in limbo. So I'm not doing limbo anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I might have done it for a year now, but unless she's coming towards me with this and mutual effort, then it's unfortunately going to have to go by the wayside.
That's really great to hear. But in closing today, is there anything else you would like to say or get off your chest or let people know about, or is there anything else you would like to say as we come to a close, David?
It's pretty much it. The only point that I'll go back to just quickly is like that control thing. I used to try to, I know probably it's self-evident from everything I've said, but to a degree, I'm not a controlling person as in trying to control other people, but I always thought I had more control in situations than I did where other people were involved. And I know I've already sort of touched on this and kind of said this, but that's the biggest realization is once you realize that you don't have control, and it's not a negative, it's kind of just like you don't have control over other people's actions, and you kind of just got to go like, let them do what they want to do and then make your decisions based on that. And that's probably the biggest realization that I've had, is, as I said before, learning to let go. And it might sound negative to people that are, obviously in pretty sad situations right now and going through it. But, when you get to the point where you're kind of coming at it from a different viewpoint, like you said, then it makes more sense. And I hope that all makes sense.
It really does. And I think it's very, very valuable for anybody who's listening right now. Just bear everything in mind that David has said. He's been there. He's got the T-shirt, as the saying goes. Me as well. In my past, I've been through many, many things, which is why I do what I do, along with all of the people I've spoke to over the years. This is where we can try and put our knowledge together and to help you guys who are going through the grind right now. So, David, thank you so much for giving us an update 2 years on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on again.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and likewise.
Thank you, David. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.